Millionaire took a baby to his ex-fiancée's wedding, and she was shocked. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Enjoy the story. The gentle breeze softly caressed the flowers delicately placed along the central aisle of the church. The string quartet's music filled the space with a celestial melody. All the guests were seated, their anticipation growing as they awaited the grand entrance of the bride. Nicholas Parker slipped quietly into the main hall, his eyes scanning the room, evaluating the best strategic point for what he was about to do. He looked striking in a perfectly tailored suit, but that wasn't what caught people's attention. It was the baby in his arms. Small and serene, the baby, dressed in an elegant white outfit, rested peacefully on his shoulder. Nicholas chose a spot near the aisle, ensuring Emma would see him the moment the doors opened. The sound of the wedding march echoed through the church, silencing the curious murmurs of the guests. Everyone rose to their feet and turned toward the entrance. The grand wooden doors slowly opened, revealing Emma Brooks. She was stunning. Her gown, a masterpiece of silk and intricate embroidery, softly reflected the light, giving her an ethereal glow. Her radiant smile lit up the room, but her eyes betrayed a deeper emotion. They shimmered with unshed tears, as though she were on the verge of crying. When she saw the groom waiting at the altar, a surge of emotion filled her chest, and she fought to maintain her composure. Her first step was steady. Then came the second. She walked slowly, offering gentle smiles to the guests who admired her with awe. However, as she approached the midpoint of the aisle, something caught her attention. Her gaze fell upon someone she hadn't expected to see. Nicholas. He was there holding a baby. Emma's world froze in that instant. Their eyes met. His were filled with something she couldn't quite decipher. Pain. Perhaps hope? Hers widened in shock and disbelief. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her thoughts collided chaotically in her mind. No, this can't be what I think it is. Her knees weakened. The aisle and the sound of the music began to fade away, the scene around her blurring. Emma, the groom's voice echoed, but she no longer heard anything. Darkness enveloped her as her body crumpled gracefully to the floor. The reaction was immediate. Some guests stood in alarm, while others gasped in shock. Daniel Henderson, the groom, sprinted down the aisle in a panic to reach her. Photographers lowered their cameras as the church descended into a state of controlled chaos. Guests whispered hurried theories to each other, while others merely watched, stunned. Emma was carried to a private room behind the altar, accompanied by Daniel and her personal assistant, Rachel. Minutes later, she stirred, slowly opening her eyes. Dazed but conscious, she managed a faint smile and murmured, I'm fine, as she tried to compose herself. Daniel clutched her hand tightly. Emma, you scared me. Do you want me to stay here with you? He asked, his eyes filled with deep concern. She took a deep breath and shook her head. No, Daniel. Go out there and reassure the guests. Tell them it was just a fainting spell. I need a moment to myself. I swear I'm already feeling better. Are you sure? He insisted. Yes, darling. I'll be fine, Emma reassured him, giving his hand a gentle squeeze before he left the room. As soon as he was gone, Emma turned to Rachel and said firmly, Call Nicholas, now, and make sure no one else comes in. Rachel hesitated for a moment, puzzled, but nodded and left to carry out the order. As if anticipating the call, Nicholas was already standing outside the door, waiting. His intense eyes revealed that he understood the impact of his presence. Rachel let him in, closing the door behind him and taking up guard outside. Nicholas entered with steady but cautious steps. He observed Emma silently for a few moments. She looked pale, but her eyes were a storm of conflicting emotions. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. What are you doing here? And that baby, no, can't be what I think it is. His gaze held hers, deep and unwavering, as he responded, "Yes, Emma, it's exactly what you're thinking." Those words hit her like a punch to the stomach. She covered her face with her hands, tears slipping through her fingers. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak again. "After all these years? We waited so long for this, Nick," she murmured, memories flooding back, of shared dreams when they were still together, of their desire to build a family, of nights spent planning to adopt a child. Nicholas let out a deep sigh, his voice laced with sincerity. "The orphanage contacted me a month ago. They said there was a baby and that we were next on the adoption list. I thought about telling them that we weren't together anymore, that I would withdraw, but I couldn't. I went to meet him, and when I saw him, Emma, I fell in love with him. I couldn't leave him there, knowing I have everything to give him a good life. I contacted my lawyers, explained the situation to the court, and now I'm here with this beautiful boy. I just wanted you to know before you walk down the aisle." Slowly, Emma stepped forward and took the baby in her arms. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, the tension gave way to tenderness. "He's beautiful, a little prince," she whispered, a melancholic smile gracing her lips, but her expression quickly shifted, hardening again. She handed the baby back to Nicholas and stepped away, taking a deep breath before continuing. "But I can't walk away from my wedding. What we had is dead. I don't feel anything for you anymore. A baby won't change that, Nick. I'm sorry if you thought I would give up everything for you. You were wrong." Each word was like a sharp blade piercing his chest. Nicholas tried to keep his composure, but his eyes betrayed the pain he felt. A part of him had still believed in the possibility of winning her back, but that hope was now shattered. With nothing more to say, he nodded silently and turned, walking slowly out of the room. The music resumed, signaling that the wedding was about to continue. From a distance, Nicholas watched as Emma walked down the aisle with steady steps. His heart broke into pieces as he saw her smile at Daniel at the altar. It was over. With one last glance at the baby, he thought to himself, "It's done. I'll never suffer for love again. From now on, my only true love will be for this child." He left the church with a newfound sense of purpose. Nothing else mattered anymore. His priority now was his son. He would give the boy everything: love, care, protection, and a bright future. Yet fate had more surprises in store for him. As dawn broke, soft light filtered through the linen curtains of the grand Parker mansion. Nicholas awoke to the faint sound of murmurs coming from the room next door. Noah was beginning to stir, letting out small whimpers but not quite crying. Rising quickly, Nick made his way to the baby's crib, smiling as he saw Noah squirm lazily. "Hey, champ." "Good morning," Nick murmured, gently lifting him into his arms. Noah opened his big, innocent eyes and let out a tiny yawn. As he soothed the baby, Nicholas found himself reflecting on the urgent need to reorganize his life. His rapidly expanding business in Chicago demanded his constant attention. As CEO of one of the city's leading tech companies, endless meetings, business trips, and crucial decisions could no longer be postponed. But how could he balance all of that with fatherhood? In recent days, Rose, the housekeeper, had been a tremendous help in caring for Noah. However, Nicholas knew it wasn't fair to place so much responsibility on her shoulders. Still holding the baby in his arms, Nicholas walked to the kitchen, where Rose was already preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Mr. Parker. How's the little one today?" she asked warmly as she served a cup of coffee. "He's great. Thanks to you, Rose. I don't know what I would have done without your help these past few days," he replied, taking a seat at the table. Rose smiled warmly with a maternal air. "It's a pleasure, sir. This little boy has brought joy to this house." Nicholas sighed and stared at the cup of coffee in his hands. "I need someone to take care of him full-time. Someone I can trust, who's kind, dedicated. He needs a constant presence, Someone who can give him the kind of care a child deserves. Rose nodded in agreement. That makes sense. You need someone skilled and committed. I can help organize the interviews if you'd like. Thank you, Rose. I'll contact an agency today. I want the interviews to start as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in a forgotten neighborhood far from the promises of a better life, narrow, grimy streets stretched between houses worn down by time and neglect. In a modest two-story home, Sophia Reed sat on the floor of her bedroom, her trembling hands clutching a crumpled ultrasound photo of her child. Tears streamed freely down her face, her heart twisting with pain and regret. She had reached her breaking point. The reality suffocating her could no longer be ignored. Ever since her parents, John and Margaret, had sent her baby away for adoption without her consent, Sophia had lived in a state of despair. Her relationship with them, already strained, had completely shattered. That morning, during yet another heated argument, she had demanded to know her child's whereabouts. "You had no right to do this," she shouted, her voice shaking with rage. "Tell me where he is, or I swear I'll leave this house today. You can't stop me." Margaret, her expression cold and unyielding, crossed her arms. Her eyes were filled with harsh judgment. "Good. Pack your things and go, Sophia. All you've ever done is bring shame to this family. You've lived for years without taking responsibility for anything. No job, no discipline, wasting our money on parties and alcohol. And now you think you can make demands." Margaret retorted. "You got pregnant by a criminal, a man who vanished the moment he found out. What did you expect? That we would take care of you and a baby you couldn't even provide for?" The impact of her mother's words hit Sophia like a punch to the gut. She took a deep breath, trying not to lash out again, but her father decided to chime in. "If you really love that child, let him have a chance at a decent life. What can you offer him, Sophia? You have no job, no education. That's the truth." The words echoed in her mind like a grim verdict. "You have nothing. You are nothing." Her parents were right. She had no prospects. It was the consequence of all her bad choices. Feeling suffocated, Sophia went up to her room, where she finally allowed herself to break down. She sat on the bed, quietly sobbing, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. Every party, every night of excess, every toxic friendship flashed through her mind like a movie. How did I end up here? After some time, she got up, walked to the mirror, and stared at her reflection. Beneath the tired eyes and pale face, the girl full of dreams she had once been was still there. She wiped away her tears and whispered to herself, "This won't define me. I will change. I'll get my child back, no matter what it takes." The next morning, Sophia woke up with a renewed sense of determination. Wearing the most presentable clothes she could find, she tied her hair back simply and set out to look for a job. She wandered through the bustling streets until she found a modest employment agency. A small bell jingled as she opened the door. The space was simple, with a few desks and job postings pinned to bulletin boards. The receptionist gave her a brief glance before directing her to the person in charge of interviews, a woman in her 50s with a serious but not unfriendly expression. They sat across from each other in a small office as the interviewer reviewed the application Sophia had filled out on site. "All right," the woman sighed after a few minutes of silence. "I won't lie to you, Sophia. Your resume is very weak. You have no work experience, your academic record isn't impressive, and you haven't completed any vocational or professional training." Sophia bit her lower lip, fighting off discouragement. "It's going to be difficult for you to find something right away," the woman continued, though her tone softened slightly. "However, there is a position that might work for you." Sophia's eyes widened with anticipation. "What position?" "A nanny. The pay isn't bad, and the employer is demanding but fair. You'd need to live on site and be available full-time. It's not glamorous, but it's the best I can offer you today." The woman paused, then added a piece of advice. "Let me be honest with you, Sophia. This could be a good opportunity to turn your life around. If you get this job, take the chance to study, learn, and work towards stabilizing yourself. You're young. Your future can still be bright, but it depends on what you do from now on. Sophia took a deep breath, absorbing the woman's words. She felt a mixture of fear and hope. This was the kind of opportunity she couldn't afford to waste. "Okay," she said, her voice resolute. "Send me to the interview. I promise I'll give it my best." The woman gave a faint smile and stood up. "Good attitude. Let's see where this takes you, Sophia." In that moment, Sophia knew. This was the first step toward a new life. Sophia took a deep breath as she passed through the towering iron gate of the Parker mansion. The entrance was lined with impeccably maintained gardens, where vibrant flowers seemed to welcome her arrival. The long, wide driveway leading to the main house was paved with stone, gently reflecting the midday sun. She could hardly believe she was there. It was a world entirely different from her own. The mansion, with its classical architecture, exuded elegance and power. Tall windows, intricately carved marble moldings, and a grand staircase leading to the main entrance made it clear that this was a place for people who held the world in their hands. Sophia felt intimidated but resolved to stand tall. "This is the beginning of my transformation. I can't let fear take over." The door was opened by a kind, middle-aged woman who introduced herself with a warm smile. "Hello, you must be Sophia. I'm Rose, the housekeeper. Welcome." "Thank you," Sophia replied shyly, trying not to look too awestruck as she crossed the threshold. The interior of the mansion was even more breathtaking. The marble floors gleamed beneath an imposing crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling of the entrance hall. The walls were adorned with paintings by renowned artists, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air. Sophia took in every detail as Rose guided her to a sophisticated sitting room, where other candidates were already waiting. "Please fill out these forms while you wait," Rose said, handing her a clipboard. Sophia complied, taking a seat on one of the blue velvet armchairs. As she filled out the paperwork, she overheard the quiet murmurs of the other women in the room, some discussing their prior experiences as nannies. They seemed so confident. Sophia began to doubt her chances but quickly forced herself to push away the negative thoughts. "I just need one opportunity. That's all I need." After some time, a well-dressed woman, likely Mr. Parker's assistant, entered the room and started calling the candidates in for interviews, one by one. Sophia waited patiently, trying to stay calm as each woman returned with expressions ranging from frustration to indifference. Finally, the assistant returned and made an announcement. "We'd like to thank you all for coming. However, we have selected 3 candidates to move forward to the next stage of the interview process with Mr. Parker. The rest of you are dismissed." Sophia held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. When the assistant called her name as one of the chosen candidates, she could hardly believe it. "I made it. I'm still in the game." She took a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief and determination as she rose along with the other 2 candidates. A few minutes later, Sophia was led to the mansion's main office. As she entered, she was momentarily speechless. The room was a flawless blend of luxury and authority. The walls were paneled with rich wood, bookshelves lined both sides, and behind a massive mahogany desk sat Nicholas Parker. He was dressed in an elegant suit, though without a tie, which gave him a slightly more approachable appearance. Still, his eyes conveyed a serious demeanor. "Please have a seat," he said, his tone firm yet polite. Sophia approached and settled into the chair across from him, trying to suppress the nervousness building in her chest. Nicholas studied her for a moment before speaking. "I'm a businessman, Miss Reed, and I need to be straightforward. I'm in a difficult situation. I'm a single father, and my schedule is consumed by work. I need someone who can be available full-time to care for my son." He paused briefly, gauging her reaction. Sophia nodded without breaking eye contact, showing she was ready to hear him out. "My proposal is this," he continued. You'll need to live here. At the back of the mansion, there's a staff house. It used to belong to my former gardener, but he's moved on and now has his own place. That's where you'll live. I'll ensure that your days off are scheduled, but I need someone I can trust, someone who won't quit after a few days. The salary is $7,000 a month, and you won't have to worry about rent, utilities, or other living expenses. Now, you know the responsibilities. So, tell me, what do you think? Sophia could hardly believe what she was hearing. $7,000 a month? That was an unimaginable sum for someone like her. This opportunity had the power to change her life entirely. At the same time, she knew it would require sacrifices. She wouldn't have a social life, she'd be tied to her job, and she wouldn't have much time for herself. Yet, this was her one chance to prove her worth, to save enough money to execute her plan of finding her son. Taking a deep breath, she looked directly into Nicholas's eyes and replied, "I accept." Nicholas raised his eyebrows, seemingly pleased. "Good." The other candidates said they needed time to think. "I prefer people who can make quick decisions." He extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Miss Reed. The job is yours." Sophia shook his hand, feeling an overwhelming sense of relief. Finally, this is the beginning of my transformation. Sophia returned home that afternoon to pack her things. The familiar environment felt even more suffocating. Her parents said nothing, merely watching as she stuffed clothes and belongings into a simple suitcase. Before stepping out the door, she took a deep breath and offered a curt farewell. "Thank you for everything. I'm going to change my life." No one responded. She knew there was nothing more to say. With her head held high, she left the home where so many mistakes had been made, but where she had finally decided to start over. During the ride back to the mansion, Sophia focused on the plan she had devised. "I'm going to save every cent. I'll hire a detective, find out where my child is, and fight for him." With that purpose burning in her heart, she arrived at the gates of the Parker mansion, ready to begin her new chapter. The late afternoon sun glimmered across the sprawling gardens, reflecting off the spotless windows. Upon arrival, Sophia was greeted by Rose, the housekeeper, who opened the door with a warm smile. "Welcome, Sophia. I'm so glad you were hired," Rose said with genuine kindness that immediately put Sophia at ease. "Thank you. This is a huge opportunity for me," Sophia replied, still awestruck by the beauty of the estate. "Come on, let me show you your new home," Rose said, motioning for her to follow. They walked along a stone path that led to the back of the property. The air was fresh and fragrant with the scent of garden flowers, making Sophia feel as though she were in an entirely different world from the one she had known. At the rear of the mansion stood a charming staff house. It was modest in size but impeccably maintained. Rose opened the door, and they stepped inside. "This is your new home," Rose said proudly. "I know it's not huge, but Mr. Parker always insists on providing comfort for everyone who works here." Sophia looked around in awe. The space was cozy and functional. The living room had comfortable furniture, and the kitchen was modern and equipped with everything she could possibly need. The bedroom featured a soft bed, clean linens, and a large window that bathed the room in natural light. She sighed in wonder. "It's beautiful. I've never seen a place like this for staff." Rose chuckled softly. "Mr. Parker is a very fair man. Demanding, yes, but he values hard work." Sophia nodded. "I never thought someone so powerful could be like this." That initial impression only strengthened her resolve to do her best. "I'll leave you to get settled," Rose continued. "Tomorrow morning, I'll be here to help you get familiar with the routine. If you need anything, just call me." "Thank you, Rose." "Really," Sophia said with a sincere smile. Rose said goodbye and left, leaving her alone. Sophia took a deep breath, feeling an unfamiliar sense of hope. She spent the rest of the afternoon organizing her belongings. She started cleaning every corner, even though the house was already spotless. It was almost like a ritual to help her feel at home. As she scrubbed the kitchen tiles, her thoughts drifted to everything she had left behind. I'm gonna work hard. I won't waste this chance. I need to keep this job and rebuild my life. After hours of cleaning, she finally allowed herself to rest. Sitting on the sofa, she glanced around the room. An involuntary smile appeared on her face. Wow, this man treats his staff with so much care. I've never seen anything like this, she murmured to herself. This is where I'll rebuild my story. She took a hot shower, changed into comfortable clothes, and lay down on the bed, savoring the warmth of the sheets. For the first time in a long while, Sophia slept peacefully. Tomorrow would be a new day and the start of a new routine. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. The morning light filtered gently into the kitchen, casting golden hues across the white tiles. Sophia had been up since 5:30, eager and determined to make a good impression on her first day. The coffee machine hummed quietly in the corner, filling the air with the rich, comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. As she waited, she mentally reviewed her goals. Be discreet. Do my best. Don't get involved in anything personal. Around 7 o'clock, the sound of firm footsteps echoed down the corridor. Nicholas appeared, impeccably dressed yet relaxed, with a hint of urgency in his eyes. He greeted her with a brief, direct nod. Good morning, Sophia. The baby is still asleep. His daily routine is outlined in this notebook. He handed her a neatly organized binder filled with detailed notes. Read it carefully. If you have any questions, ask Rose. She's been helping me a lot these past few days. I'll be back at 6. At that time, you'll be off duty and free to rest. Sophia nodded. Of course, Mr. Parker. I'll take care of everything. Nicholas studied her for a moment, as if assessing whether she was truly up to the responsibility. Then he simply said, Good. I'm counting on you. See you later. He left, and Sophia remained in the kitchen, holding the notebook. She began flipping through it, absorbing every detail about feeding schedules, diaper changes, naps, and playtime. Nicholas's handwriting was surprisingly neat and meticulous. She pondered, biting the corner of her lip. It's incredible how much he cares about his son. A man this busy, what could have happened to the child's mother? But she quickly shook her head, dismissing the thought. It's none of my business. I'm not here to get involved in gossip. Moments later, Rose entered the kitchen with her usual warm smile. How was your first night, dear? Did you sleep well? She asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Yes, very well. I'm ready for the day, Sophia replied, trying to hide her nervousness. The two women sat quietly for a few minutes, sipping their coffee, until the faint sound of crying came from upstairs. Rose set her cup down and smiled. Our little prince is awake. Come on, I'll introduce you to him officially. Sophia followed Rose down the hall and up the stairs to the baby's room. The nursery was charming, decorated in soft shades of blue and white, with delicate details throughout. In the crib, Noah squirmed, his little face scrunching as he whimpered. Rose gently turned on the light and picked him up. Here he is, our little boss, the prince of this house, Rose teased, rocking him gently. He's brought so much light to this place. The moment Sophia saw the baby, an intense wave of emotion hit her. Time seemed to slow as her eyes locked onto him. No, it can't be. His face, the color of his eyes, his features, they were eerily familiar. Her heart began pounding wildly, and she felt her legs weaken. It's just a coincidence. Babies all look alike. She thought desperately, trying to calm herself. Rose noticed her expression and gave her a curious look. Are you all right, dear? Sophia quickly pulled herself together, forcing a smile. Yes, I'm fine. He's beautiful. Let me hold him. Let's get that diaper changed and start the day. Rose handed Noah to Sophia and smiled. Perfect. I'll get things ready in the kitchen. Call me if you need any help. As soon as Rose left, Sophia was alone with the baby. Tears welled up in her eyes. She tried to convince herself that she was simply overwhelmed, But deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There's something more here, something that doesn't make sense. She remembered the birthmark her son had beside his navel, a small spot shaped like a drop of ink. She needed to be sure. Taking a deep breath, she prepared to change the diaper. When she finally saw the mark, the world around her seemed to vanish. It was him. "Oh my God, it's my son," Sophia whispered, allowing the tears to flow freely down her face. She sank to her knees, holding the baby tightly against her chest. "Thank you, God. Thank you for helping me. You are real. This is a miracle." The tears kept coming as she felt the weight of all the emotions she had carried for so long. Relief, joy, and fear swirled inside her heart. But with this revelation came doubts and worries. What am I going to do now? How did this man adopt my son? He has all the legal rights. I can't just run away with him. That would be a crime. And he can provide so much more for my son than I ever could. Sophia stood up, trying to steady herself. Maybe God placed me here for a reason. Maybe I'm meant to follow this path. At least for now. She gently rocked Noah in her arms and, to her surprise, felt something unexpected. A warm sensation spread through her chest. Looking down, she realized she was producing milk again. Tears welled up once more, now mixed with an overwhelming sense of connection. Sophia sat in the armchair in the nursery and carefully began nursing the baby. He calmed instantly, relaxing against her body. He knew. He could feel he was in the arms of the woman who had given him life. In that moment, the bond between mother and child deepened. Sophia resolved that, as long as she was there, she would do everything for his well-being. "I'll protect him. I'll give him all the love I can, even if he never knows I'm his mother. At least for now." She wiped her tears away, her determination solidifying. This was the beginning of a new phase in her life, one that would require strength, discretion, and patience. The days at the Parker mansion became filled with sweet and memorable moments. Nicholas observed with admiration the way Sophia cared for Noah. The tenderness and patience with which she fed, played with, and put him to sleep reflected a deep love he couldn't quite explain. Over time, he grew more comfortable around her. At first, their conversations were strictly about the baby's routine, but soon they began sharing stories about their lives, dreams, and thoughts. They often strolled with Noah through the mansion's gardens or the nearby park. Nicholas, though accustomed to solitude, started to treasure these moments of simplicity and connection. Sophia was by his side when Noah took his first hesitant steps. She also celebrated with him when the boy spoke his first words. "Mammam," Noah babbled one day, and Sophia's heart tightened. He recognizes the bond even without knowing the truth, she thought. Despite the joy of being so close to her son, Sophia still felt a deep anguish over not being able to reveal the truth. How much longer can I keep this secret? On a quiet night, she knelt beside her bed and prayed fervently. "God, give me strength. Help me do what's right, for his sake." The next morning, on a sunny Saturday, Sophia was playing with Noah in the living room while Nicholas sipped his coffee on the veranda. The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house. Rose went to answer it and was surprised to find an elegant woman at the door. Her eyes were slightly red and puffy, as if she had been crying. "Good morning. I'd like to speak with Mr. Parker." "My name is Emma Brooks," the visitor announced in a restrained voice. Rose frowned slightly but nodded. "Please wait a moment." When Nicholas heard the name, his eyebrows shot up in shock. "Emma? What is she doing here?" He walked toward the hallway and saw his ex-fiancée standing at the entrance. Before he could say anything, Emma rushed toward him and threw herself into his arms. "Nick, please, forgive me. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have married that man. Forgive me. I want to be with you and our son. We can start over." Tears streamed down her face as her voice cracked in desperation. Nicholas gently pulled away from her, his expression confused and disbelieving. "Emma, What are you doing here? Are you out of your mind? You made it very clear that you didn't feel anything for me anymore. And now you just show up wanting to start over. Emma took a deep breath, trying to control her sobs. I was deceived. Nick, he doesn't love me, not truly. It was a mistake. I looked back and realized what I lost. I lost you, and now I want to fix that. Nicholas shook his head, still incredulous. Meanwhile, Sophia, who was watching the scene from a distance, felt a surge of panic. If she comes back, she'll want to take on the role of mother. What will happen to me? And to Noah? The tension in the air seemed to thicken, as if everyone in the house could feel the weight of the conversation. Suddenly, Noah began to cry, a loud, desperate wail. Sophia rushed to comfort him, but he wouldn't stop. Her anxiety only made things worse. Apologizing quickly to Rose and Nicholas, she scooped the baby up and carried him upstairs to his room. Once there, Sophia tried everything to calm him. She paced back and forth, whispering soothing words, but nothing worked. He can feel the tension. He always feels it. Finally, she sat in the armchair and, out of options, began nursing him. Noah relaxed almost immediately, his tiny eyes slowly closing as he sucked contentedly. Sophia felt a wave of relief but also deep sadness. What will happen to us now? It's going to be all right, my love. I'm here, Sophia whispered as discreet tears rolled down her face. Meanwhile, in the living room, Nicholas finally regained his composure. He looked Emma straight in the eyes and spoke in a firm tone. I'm sorry, Emma. You had your chance and chose someone else. How can I trust that the next time you meet another millionaire at some gala, you won't leave me again? I can't take that risk. I have a son to care for now, and he is my priority. Emma was silent for a moment, processing his words. Then, with a cynical smile, she asked, You already have someone else, don't you? It's that housemaid, isn't it? Nicholas narrowed his eyes, clearly irritated. No, Emma, I don't have anyone, and I'm not interested in having anyone. Now, please leave. Emma gave him one last frustrated glance. I see. Goodbye, Nicholas. She turned on her heel and walked out with firm steps. Rose closed the door and let out a sigh of relief. Nicholas stood still for a few moments, processing everything that had just happened. Finally, he made his way upstairs to check on Noah. As he approached the nursery, he noticed the door was slightly ajar. He peeked through the gap and froze at what he saw. Sophia was nursing the baby. How is that possible? He thought, bewildered. He remained there for a few moments, not wanting to disturb the intimate scene. Eventually, he quietly backed away and left the hallway. In his office, Nicholas sat at his desk, deep in thought. For her to be able to nurse, she must be a mother. But how is that possible? She's always here. She never leaves the mansion. Nothing made sense. After a few minutes of reflection, he picked up the phone and called a trusted private investigator. I need you to investigate someone for me. Sophia Reed. I want to know everything about her. He provided the necessary details and ended the call. Something was going on, and he needed to uncover the truth. Later, Sophia returned to the service area, still trying to compose herself. Nicholas was waiting for her, arms crossed and his expression serious. Did the baby calm down? He asked. Yes, he's fine now, she replied, avoiding his gaze. And the woman? She seemed pretty in love with you, Sophia ventured, trying to lighten the tension. Nicholas scoffed. She's crazy. She was my ex-fiancée. She left me for another millionaire and now she's back saying she's unhappy. But I don't feel anything for her anymore. I told her to leave. Sophia exhaled quietly, feeling a wave of relief. A comfortable silence settled between them for a moment. Want to have some coffee together? Nicholas suggested casually. Sophia looked up, surprised by the sudden proposal. Since she had started working there, he had always maintained a strictly professional demeanor. Now, however, he seemed more relaxed. For a moment, She hesitated but then gave a small smile and accepted. Sure, why not? They walked together to the mansion's main kitchen. The space was large but had a warm, inviting atmosphere. Nicholas personally made the coffee, which left Sophia feeling slightly off balance. Here he was, a busy businessman, taking time to share a simple moment. After a few minutes, they sat at the rustic wooden table, each holding a cup. Nicholas was the first to break the silence. Tell me more about yourself, Sophia. I want to understand who you are beyond the amazing person who cares for Noah. She met his gaze, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. She wasn't used to opening up, especially about the past she felt so ashamed of. But there was a sincerity in Nicholas's expression. He seemed genuinely interested. He deserves honesty, she thought. There's not much to tell, she began after a sigh. I had a fun childhood. I was always active, playing in the streets with the neighborhood kids. Running around all day until nightfall, Nicholas smiled, picturing her as a lively, carefree child. But things changed as I got older, she continued, her expression growing more serious. I became rebellious. I drove my parents crazy. I didn't care about school. I just wanted to have fun. As a teenager, I got involved with the wrong people. I spent my days partying, drinking, doing things I'm ashamed of now. She paused, her eyes drifting to her coffee cup. Nicholas sensed the pain behind her words but didn't interrupt. My parents got fed up with me, rightfully so. They kicked me out, told me I had to fend for myself and take responsibility. I had nothing, no skills, no college education, nothing that could give me a future. Sophia took a deep breath before continuing. Thankfully, I got this job. Saved me, Sophia continued. Now, all I want is to become someone my parents can be proud of one day. Nicholas remained silent for a few moments, absorbing everything she had shared. He was struck by her honesty and courage. Sophia didn't hide behind excuses. She faced her mistakes and was determined to change. Sophia, he said, his voice gentler than she had ever heard it. I admire you. You've been through tough things, but you didn't let them destroy you. You're here, giving your best, and that's something not everyone can do. She lifted her gaze, surprised by his kind words. I'm glad you're here. I'm sure your parents will be proud of you, if they aren't already. And thank you for taking such good care of my son, Nicholas added sincerely. Sophia smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. I love doing it. Noah is special. In that moment, Nicholas realized something he had perhaps been avoiding. Sophia wasn't just an employee. There was a tenderness, a sweetness in her eyes and in her actions that went beyond professionalism. She was kind, resilient, and deeply caring. He felt an inexplicable attraction to the genuine essence she carried. That simple coffee together marked the beginning of a new connection between them. Their relationship was no longer just that of employer and employee. Something deeper was beginning to take root. Time passed with a lightness Nicholas hadn't felt in years. He found himself smiling more often, effortlessly. Sophia's presence was a constant relief from the pressures of his daily responsibilities. They developed a comfortable routine. After Noah was asleep, they would often meet in the living room to watch movies, chat, or even share books. Sophia, with her captivating warmth, made him feel at ease. It was as though the weight of his duties melted away when they were together. You laugh a lot more lately, you know? Sophia teased one evening after a funny scene in the movie they were watching. It's hard not to laugh when I'm around you, he replied, almost without realizing the intimacy in his tone. Their eyes met for a moment, but Sophia quickly looked away, smiling shyly. Nicholas felt something stir within him. He couldn't deny it anymore. This woman had become an essential presence in his life. One day, Sophia took Noah for a walk. The little boy was radiant, enchanted by the sounds of birds and the falling leaves around him at the park. Meanwhile, Nicholas sat in the living room, ostensibly reading work reports, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The image of Sophia laughing during breakfast lingered in his mind. Without realizing it, he stared out the window with a distant smile on his face. Rose, the housekeeper, walked through the living room and noticed Nicholas completely lost in thought. "Mr. Parker, what's going on with you?" she asked, crossing her arms playfully. Nicholas blinked a few times, snapping back to reality. "What are you talking about, Rose?" She chuckled softly and stepped closer. "Oh, come on. Don't fool yourself, dear. Ever since that young lady moved in, you've become a different man. You've got that silly smile on your face whenever she's near. You're always finding excuses to spend more time with her." Nicholas opened his mouth to respond, but Rose raised her hand, cutting him off. "Let's be honest here. You go out of your way to make her happy, and she does the same for you. You do all sorts of things together. This isn't just friendship. It's time to admit that you're in love, Nicholas." He shifted uncomfortably on the couch, feeling exposed by the truth she had laid out so plainly. "In love? You think so?" "Think? I know so." Rose smiled with the confidence of someone who knew him all too well. "And let me give you another piece of advice. If you don't act soon, someone else might come along and take her away. You know as well as I do that she's a beautiful woman." Nicholas ran a hand through his hair, sighing deeply. "You know me better than I know myself, Rose. After 10 years of working with you, I'd say that's true," she replied with a knowing smile. Nicholas laughed softly, relaxing a bit. "So, what do you suggest?" Rose tapped his shoulder lightly. "Start with a special dinner. Tonight, I'll take care of Noah. No need to worry." He thought about it for a moment and finally nodded. "Good idea. I'll make a reservation right now." He stood, grabbing his phone to make the arrangements. Before leaving the room, he paused and turned to Rose. "Rose, you're the best housekeeper in the world." "Thank you," she grinned, pleased. "And you're a good boss. Now go and make tonight special." Nicholas hurried off, and Rose chuckled quietly to herself, confident that something wonderful was about to happen in the house. Meanwhile, Sophia returned from her walk with Noah, feeling the gentle breeze caress her face. The baby, calm and nestled in her arms, was on the verge of falling asleep, lulled by the peaceful rhythm of their stroll. As she entered the mansion, she saw Nicholas standing at the entrance to the living room, waiting for her with a warm smile. "How was the walk?" he asked, stepping closer. "It was great. He loves the park. He's fascinated by the trees and the birds," Sophia replied enthusiastically. Nicholas observed the natural joy in her voice as she spoke about Noah. There was something contagious about the way she lit up the room, even after months of living in the house. He realized that, in a way, she had brought color and life to a home that had once felt empty. "Sophia," he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Yes, I have a proposal for you. How about dinner tonight?" She blinked a few times, surprised as she processed the invitation. "Dinner? Yes, I've taken care of everything. Rose will watch Noah. And I'm not accepting no for an answer." His playful tone brought a smile to Sophia's lips. She chuckled softly, shaking her head. "I guess I don't have a choice, huh? Of course I'll come." Nicholas smiled, relieved and pleased by her response. "Great. Be ready at 7. Sophia spent the rest of the day in a mix of nervousness and excitement. It had been months since she'd gone out, and the idea of having dinner with Nicholas intrigued her. Is this just a casual dinner, or does it mean something more? She went to her room to get ready, choosing a dress she had saved for a special occasion. It was elegant but understated, subtly flattering her figure. Her makeup was light, just enough to highlight her eyes. When she finished, she looked at herself in the mirror and took a deep breath. "You can do this. It's just dinner." As she descended the stairs, she found Nicholas waiting at the entrance. He looked impeccable in a dark suit without a tie, and when he saw her, his eyes widened slightly in admiration. "Wow, you look stunning," he said, unable to hide the impact she had on him. Sophia blushed, momentarily averting her gaze. "Thank you. You look very handsome yourself." He extended his arm, and she accepted it, feeling a spark of electricity run through her. "What's happening to me?" The restaurant Nicholas had chosen was sophisticated, with an intimate atmosphere. Soft lighting created a warm, inviting ambience, while a pianist in the background played a gentle melody. They were led to a reserved table in a discreet corner, away from curious eyes. "I hope you like it here. It's one of my favorite places," Nicholas said as he pulled out a chair for her. "It's beautiful," Sophia replied, admiring the surroundings. During dinner, their conversation flowed naturally. They laughed, shared stories, and spoke about their dreams and fears. Nicholas was captivated by Sophia's vulnerability and honesty. She didn't hide her past, yet she refused to let it define her. "I admire your strength," he said at one point. "You've been through so much, but you still have this light." Sophia's heart quickened. "I'm just trying to do my best." "You are," Nicholas said softly, leaning in slightly, his eyes locked on hers. "Not just with Noah, but with me too." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Sophia felt the weight of them, but also the warmth they carried. They remained silent for a few moments, simply gazing at each other, until the waiter arrived with dessert, breaking the tension. After dinner, Nicholas drove her back to the mansion. The night was clear, and the moon cast a silver glow over the gardens. Before they entered, he made a suggestion. "How about a drink to end the night?" Sophia smiled shyly. "Yes, I'd like that." They settled on one of the outdoor terraces, where a small table had already been prepared with a bottle of wine. Nicholas poured their glasses and raised his in a toast. "To new possibilities," he said, gazing deeply into her eyes. Sophia clinked her glass with his, but she felt the air around them grow heavier, more charged. Nicholas leaned in slightly closer, his tone gentle but resolute. "Sophia, I need to confess something." A shiver ran down her spine. "Did he find out my secret?" She wondered, gripping her glass tightly. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Nicholas looked directly into her eyes, his sincerity disarming her. "I'm in love with you. I can't pretend I don't feel this anymore. You awaken something in me that I can't even explain." Sophia was speechless. She knew she felt something for Nicholas too, but the weight of her secret loomed over the perfect moment like a shadow. "What do I do now?" Finally, she found the courage to respond. With a soft smile, she gently caressed his face. "Nicholas, Before she could continue, he interrupted her with a tender, passionate kiss. Sophia surrendered completely, letting herself be carried away by the moment. All the emotional walls she had built crumbled in that instant. They stood there under the starlight, connected in a way that transcended words. His touch brought warmth to her very soul. Their bodies intertwined, driven by both passion and tenderness, as they shared a beautiful night of love. Sophia felt cherished and valued like never before. For Nicholas, it was as if he were rediscovering the meaning of love. As he fell asleep beside the incredible woman next to him, he knew deep down that this was the beginning of something truly special. The next morning, Sophia woke before everyone else. The room was bathed in the soft glow of dawn, but the peace she had felt the night before had vanished. Her chest tightened with anxiety. The secret, thinking about it, made the weight of guilt rise to the surface. She glanced at Nicholas, who still slept peacefully beside her. Silently, she got up, dressed, and slipped away toward the staff house. There, she freshened up and tried to organize her thoughts. "I should have told him earlier. How can I move forward with him without revealing the truth?" After a shower, she tied her hair in a neat bun and returned to the mansion. She headed straight to Noah's room. Leaning against the doorframe, she watched the baby sleep peacefully in his crib. He looked so serene, so safe. A wave of both love and sorrow washed over her. I only want the best for you, my little one. But how do I handle this now? Nicholas woke up shortly after and immediately noticed Sophia's absence. A small wave of concern hit him. He quickly got out of bed, put on a shirt, and began searching for her throughout the mansion. As he approached Noah's room, he saw her standing there, lost in thought, with a calm yet deeply reflective expression on her face. For a few moments, Nicholas simply observed her in silence. The soft morning light illuminated her face, enhancing her natural beauty. His heart warmed as he noticed the tenderness in her eyes as she gazed at Noah. She's incredible. The way she loves my son is something I can't even begin to explain. Deciding not to wait any longer, Nicholas stepped forward and gently wrapped his arms around her from behind. He inhaled the sweet scent that always seemed to calm him. Sophia flinched slightly but quickly relaxed in his embrace. "You left so early," he whispered, resting his chin on her shoulder. Sophia slowly turned to face him, a trace of apprehension glimmering in her eyes. "Nicholas, I need to tell you something," she said softly but firmly. "I have a secret. I can't keep hiding it. It wouldn't be fair to you, to what we're building." Her words made Nicholas's heart race. Part of him was filled with fear. Does she have someone else? Was this all just a mistake? Anxious thoughts flooded his mind, but he fought to remain calm. "All right, let's go to my office. We can talk privately there," he suggested, gently holding her hand. Sophia nodded, the knot in her stomach tightening even more. This was the moment of truth. She knew that after today, nothing would ever be the same. Once inside his office, Sophia sat in the armchair across from Nicholas. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clasped her hands together, trying to steady herself. There was no turning back now. Their eyes met, his filled with expectation and a hint of concern. "I'm not going to beat around the bush, Nicholas. I'll get straight to the point," she began, her voice tense but resolute. "Your son, Noah. He's my son." Nicholas frowned, confusion etched across his face. "What do you mean?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "You think of him as your son because you take care of him every day, right? That's normal, but—" She shook her head, cutting him off. "No, Nicholas, that's not it. Noah is my biological son." The air in the room grew heavier. Nicholas froze for several moments, as if the words she had spoken didn't make sense. Then he stood abruptly, pacing back and forth. "What? How is that possible? Are you telling me that—" He paused, running a hand through his hair in agitation. "How could you hide something so serious from me?" Sophia stood slowly and approached him, though she kept a small distance between them. "I didn't know it was him at first," she explained, her voice trembling slightly. "But when I saw his birthmark, I knew. I wanted to tell you, but I was scared. Scared of losing him, scared of losing you. Please listen to me. I'll tell you everything," Sophia pleaded, her voice trembling. "My parents, they sent my son away for adoption without my consent. I was lost, unsure of what to do with my life. When I got this job, I had no idea that Noah was my baby, until I saw him for the first time. His birthmark confirmed my suspicions." Nicholas breathed heavily. He stopped pacing and looked at her with disbelief. "And you decided to stay silent? Why?" he asked, his voice lower but still filled with emotion. "What if you had been fired? How were you planning to handle that?" Sophia swallowed hard, her voice steady with honesty. "From the moment I got here, I saw how much you love Noah, how dedicated you are to him. My parents were right about one thing. I didn't have the means to give my son the life you can. I didn't want to ruin what you had built with him." She paused, letting her words settle between them. "If I had been fired, I probably would have told you the truth. But I knew, Nicholas, I knew that even with the pain of finding out, you wouldn't push me away from him. Not with the kind of heart you have." Nicholas turned his back to her, processing everything he had just heard. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Yet deep down, he knew Sophia was right about one thing. He could never keep her away from Noah. She's his mother, and she's also the woman I love. After several moments of silence, he finally turned around. His eyes, though still emotional, were softened by understanding. Sophia, you did all of this for Noah's well-being. And for mine too. I can't imagine a more incredible mother than you. She let out a shaky breath as tears streamed down her face. Nicholas stepped closer and gently wiped one of her tears with his thumb. I was overwhelmed because this was such a shock. But now I understand, you did the best you could. And, if I may say so, you don't have to carry this burden alone anymore. Not now, not ever again. He stepped forward and tenderly took her hands in his. Sophia, you have my heart. You always have. And now you have more than that. Together, we'll be wonderful parents to Noah. He smiled softly. So, now I need to know, will you stop being my employee and become my wife and the mother of our son? Sophia gasped, her hands trembling in his. She could hardly believe the words she was hearing. Emotion overwhelmed her as she nodded, tears of joy flowing freely. Yes, Nicholas, yes, I will, she whispered through the tears, her voice filled with love and relief. Those words washed over her like a healing balm, dissolving the heavy burden she had carried for so long. Sophia smiled through her tears, feeling lighter than ever. She ran into Nicholas's arms, embracing him with all the love in her heart. Yes, yes, I accept, she exclaimed with deep emotion. Nicholas held her tightly, feeling as if they were finally whole. In that moment, the love between them became an unbreakable force, capable of overcoming any obstacle. They laughed together, as though the tension of the past few months was now a distant memory. Sophia knew she had found not just the man of her life, but also a future full of love and hope for her son. A few hours later, Nicholas's phone rang. It was the detective he had hired. "Hey man, you won't believe what I found out," the detective said excitedly. Nicholas smiled and replied calmly, "Oh, I think I already know. You're going to tell me that Sophia is the biological mother of my son, right?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, she's already told me. And honestly, that was the best news of my life. Thanks for your services, but we won't be needing anything else." The detective chuckled and Nicholas joined in. After hanging up, he turned back to Sophia, who was waiting for him with a loving gaze. As time passed, Sophia and Nicholas solidified their bond. Sophia was officially recognized as Noah's mother, and they married in an intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends and loved ones. Noah grew up in a home filled with love, protected and guided by two parents who adored him unconditionally. What had begun as a story of pain and challenges transformed into a journey of redemption, resilience, and, most importantly, true love. Together, Nicholas, Sophia, and Noah became a family whose strength was fueled by their courage to face the truth and fight for what truly mattered. The happiness that once seemed impossible now filled every small moment they shared. At last, they were able to live the happily ever after they so deeply deserved. If you enjoyed this video, let us know in the comments. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to subscribe. A big hug, and see you in the next video.